song, Free, was inspired by a documentary film about the First Step Act, and the path that Van Jones took to help move this legislation forward to free people who have been incarcerated for nonviolent crimes who ultimately have overstayed their sentences. Um, when he asked me to write a song inspired by the film, um, I was able to glean inspiration from stories like that of Alice Marie Johnson, and speak to the anguish that one would feel should they be incarcerated um, in for a nonviolent crime, and in with a sentencing that is um, much harsher than it potentially should be. Um, and when it came time to make a music video, I thought the best way to represent this song is to showcase the lives that have been impacted by the carceral system.
Welcome to episode 60 of People Are the Answer. I truly believe that people are the only answer to the world's many problems. I'm Jeffrey M. Zucker, a serial entrepreneur here to learn how innovators are creating outsized, transformational social impact. Today's episode features Aloe Blacc, an incredibly talented and accomplished singer, songwriter, and changemaker known for hits like I Need a Dollar, Wake Me Up, and The Man. Aloe works tirelessly to use his platform for good and integrates important messages and causes into his music. Aloe and I discuss his relationship with music, what he learned in the corporate world before going to music full-time, how artists can create change, his upcoming cause-themed album, his work in BioTech, and much more, covering issues like healthcare, criminal justice reform, poverty, and beyond. Here is Aloe Blacc on People Are the Answer. Aloe, thank you so much for joining me on People Are the Answer.
Thank you for having me.
It really is an honor to have you. Always been impressed with your music, and to have learned about your work over the last couple of years has just been really tremendous. The impact that you're making, and I'm excited to dig into both. It'd be great if you could just start off by telling our listeners who you are, where you're based, and what you're up to these days.
Right, I'm Aloe Blacc. I'm a singer, songwriter, entertainer, recording artist. I generally travel the world making music, but I call Los Angeles my home. Working on new albums, finding ways to amplify the organizations and nonprofit organizations that I am working with or adjacent to. And also recently started a biotech company to advance some research that could potentially transform our relationship to viruses. I think, it wasn't something I was planning to do. It's just something I fell into, and I'm learning a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And generally in life, what would you say motivates you?
I guess in life, what motivates me is human connection, and music definitely gives me that opportunity to make connections with other people. I love to experiment with language and how language can be evocative of emotion. I love to be helpful and find ways to inspire people and motivate people. And I love to be efficient and find better systems and better methodologies to make life more convenient and healthier and safer.
Love the way that you put that. And you mentioned being based in the LA area. Is that where you grew up, or where were you as a kid?
I grew up in Southern California, not too far from Los Angeles, an hour south in a town called Laguna Hills. It was a sleepy suburban town that only had a really small population, but it was just right for me. So small enough for me to feel seen, and big enough for me to have fun.
And when in that journey did your relationship with music begin?
Started really early on. I had become a fan of hip hop music and was learning a lot about uh, hip hop as a youngster by breakdancing and writing rap songs in my notebook. Eventually got a chance to record some of those when I got into high school. I met a DJ who was making beats. His name is DJ Exile, and we started recording together on some very rudimentary recording equipment. Nonetheless, we were able to duplicate cassettes and sell cassettes to our friends and other people in the neighborhood.
Awesome. So it sounds like you had that entrepreneurial spirit early that's, required to make it as an artist.
Absolutely. It started really young, and it was a lot to the credit of DJ Exile, who had already gone through one iteration of making a product and selling it. He basically educated me on the whole process, from ideation to recording to mixing, mastering, duplication, and then distribution and selling on consignment to record stores throughout Southern California.
Yeah, it's wow, really incredible to hear how you guys were able to grow. And you mentioned starting that in high school, but growing up, I read that you played a rented trumpet in third grade. You started writing rap songs when you were 9. Can you talk more about your relationship to music, as a child?
Yeah, I wanted to engage with music in a way that was beyond the normal music class that everyone else was doing in school, and the school orchestra was an opportunity to get outside of the classroom and go do something different. And so I told my mom I wanted to play the trumpet, and she rented the trumpet, and I played from third grade on up to freshman year in high school. Eventually, my dad was like, "We're going to buy a trumpet. Seems like you like this," and I think he made the smarter business decision in terms of cost. But it became, part of the fabric of my childhood and my education. At the same time, I was writing lyrics, hip hop lyrics, and becoming more engaged in this culture of hip hop, where ultimately, when I finally put down the trumpet, I picked up the microphone and started recording.
Awesome. It's really cool to see how some artists develop that so early. And can you tell me a little bit more about your experiences in terms of giving back as you were growing up? Because it seems in your music career, you've always been really big on giving back to your local community and to organizations that you can help and people that you can help. Where was sort of the origin of that in your life?
I started understanding the concept. Well, both my parents had government jobs, and in a way, public servant kind of public sector jobs, where my dad was in the military. He was a Marine for 30 years, retired as a major. My mom worked at the local courthouse as a court clerk, and then as a judicial assistant, so where she was working with the community to offer her guidance on what kind of judgments were appropriate for misdemeanor crimes. And throughout high school, I had an opportunity to engage with organizations like the Key Club, Kiwanis, and with Rotary and the Lions Club, and I got a chance to see what it looked like to be part of organizations that were tasked with giving back and had specific mission to give back and to develop and nurture community. And so early on, I had these experiences. I didn't recognize how that was kind of building me to be a philanthropist in the future.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear how you came across that and really started getting engaged, and how it's been such an ongoing part of your life. And you mentioned starting your music career early, in high school, forming the group that you mentioned with Exile, and I believe it's called Emanon. Is that right?
Yeah, we named our group Emanon. It was song title, and I had borrowed the song title from one of my favorite trumpet players, jazz trumpeter Dizzy Gillespie. And DJ Exile thought that it would be also a good name for our group. So we named our group after the song.
Love that. And do you guys still make music together?
We continue to make music together, and we release infrequently, but we have collaborations that we share with other artists and friends that are near and dear to us. And we intend to release more music in the near future.
And after starting your music career, from what I've read, it looks like you went back and got a bachelor's degree in linguistics and psychology from USC. Can you tell me about the decision to do that and why those subjects in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my music career started effectively at my freshman year in high school. And when I graduated, I went straight to university at
Oh,
USC.
okay.
And I wanted to study neuroscience, but the USC did not have a major for neuroscience. But I didn't really want to be on the wet lab side. I wanted to be more on the theoretical side. And that was the classes that I could piece together were communications, linguistics, and psychology. And so I had the opportunity to do an interdisciplinary major.
Awesome. That sounds like an interesting experience. And I know that it was a great experience for you at USC, that you were a Renaissance and trustee scholar. How did you feel like that decision in going there impacted, the rest of your life?
Well, it was really huge. The trustee scholarship was a merit-based full tuition scholarship. I had gotten into Stanford, which is another school that I really wanted to go to, but the scholarship award that I received wouldn't have covered as much as what USC covered. So I decided to go to USC based on the money. I think had I gone to Stanford, I probably would have become a founder much sooner if I'd gone and been part of that cohort of students back in the 90s. But I think the community around Los Angeles, the proximity to the music industry, the organizations that I was able to be part of and learn from were really helpful. I joined a internship organization called Inroads that gave me an opportunity to intern at Ernst & Young on the consulting side, and I was able to then, matriculate into a paid employed position when I graduated from university. The Renaissance Scholar Award when I was at USC was something that I didn't expect because it came in my senior year, or the summer before my senior year, and it was really good that I had that opportunity to work in an actual neuroscience lab. And at this point, it was the wet lab side, and we were studying where motor memories were recorded. And I had an opportunity to really get a sense of how to write a research paper, how to do lab research, and all of that, I think, informs the work that I'm doing now as a BioTech founder.
And what was it about the brain that intrigued you so much that, brought you to those studies?
I don't know. As a young kid, I always thought I would be involved in studying the brain in some way. When I was in elementary school, I thought that I would be someone who analyzed dreams. And now that I look at the technology, dream analysis actually involves neuroscience, neurolingual programming, so language processing, and psychology. It's all the things and communication, all the things that I was studying in school. Had I continued along, I probably would have found my way in being part of the systems that are now being developed to actually analyze and decode dreams.
Wow. Great topic to choose. And it was interesting to hear that you did spend that time at Ernst & Young, and, very different from the music industry, being in the corporate world. How did that experience influence you, on an ongoing basis?
I think it gave me a sense of how the corporate world works. It gave me some discipline. It gave me an understanding of business structures. And it's stuff that I think I employ today because I basically, with a small team, I am able to run the business that I engage in the entertainment world without a lot of outside handlers.
So you spent that time in the corporate world, and it allows you to operate your own business today, and was really helpful in that. What was it like transitioning into music full time from there, and what led you to that decision?
I remember when I first got hired, there was a quarterly meeting where new hires were being hazed, so to speak, and we all had to ice break by reciting a poem or doing an interpretive dance. I decided I would sing a song, and at the end of my song, one of the partners came up to me and said, "I think you might be in the wrong business, kid." And it was, a 2 year stint with Ernst and Young, 4 years during interning during the summer during college, and then 2 years full time. Um, and they had just a reduction of force. I was laid off as one of the new hires, and it gave me an opportunity to focus on music full time. I thought maybe I'll go back to school or get another consulting gig, but opportunities kept presenting themselves, and music as a career became a real uh, option.
And how soon from it becoming a real option did it take for you to release your first album?
It was only about 3 years. So um, after I had left the corporate world, I had the opportunity to tour Europe and meet with other artists, and those chance encounters led to getting signed to an independent label that gave me a budget to record 2 albums. And by my second album, I had a song that became a hit.
That's awesome. Was that song "I Need a Dollar"?
That was "I Need a Dollar." It was a lucky chance. I had no idea about how songs become hits. I was just making music that I felt good to make, and I always kind of resigned to the possibility that music would not become a career. I'm only doing this for a short amount of time, and I'm going to go back to get a PhD or a master's, or go back to corporate.
And then that song took off, and I mean, I certainly remember encountering it, watching How to Make It in America on HBO. That was a fun show for a couple seasons, but it certainly showcased the song. Was that part of helping it get where it was, or was it already there before that happened?
The song was catapulted by the show because it was selected as the theme, and people really, really gravitated toward the theme of the song of the show.
Absolutely, and certainly a fun song. And so when that happened, I know you reached gold status around the world. Was that success what really showed you this is something that you could keep going with?
Yeah, that was the indication that I would be doing music for quite some time. And again, opportunities kept presenting themselves. The the song reached the ears of a music mogul by the name of Simon Fuller, who signed me under management and connected me with Interscope Recordings to release more music on a major label. And one thing after the other in terms of the right investment, the right leadership, and the right songs afforded me the opportunity to release and have success with a few more songs.
And I read that experience with Interscope and that part of your career, prompted a moment of reckoning. Can you go into that?
Yeah, I signed with Interscope, and I thought this is an opportunity to speak to the entire world. What am I going to say? I mean, I've already been here, and now my megaphone is going to get bigger and more powerful. So I decided that I would use my voice for positive social change. I would try to speak songs that could motivate people and tell the story of the underdog, to humanize situations, and create art that could stand the test of time.
It's really beautiful to hear how intentionally you went about that, and how important it was to you, in taking the responsibility of having that platform. I feel like there are a lot of people out there that may have a platform that don't even notice that it's a responsibility. So for you to come in with that is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think mainly because I was older. I had a chance to have some perspective in life. And I was at the beginning of my 30s, and I think a fully developed human. So knowing that I had the opportunity to make money and be good, do good in the world.
Yeah, it's such an important thing, and many people that have come on the show, that's what they talk about, is how to be both successful and sustainable while making the world a better place. And it's really awesome to see how you integrated that into your music career. If you're enjoying this episode, I would greatly appreciate if you could review, like, comment, or subscribe on your favorite platforms. Your engaged support goes a long way in helping the show grow and getting our impactful guests heard. Now back to the show. You went on to do the vocals on Avicii's "Wake Me Up," huge hit. Sadly, Avicii passed in 2018. Can you just talk about that overall experience?
Yeah, it was a great opportunity to meet Avicii, and may he rest in peace. His music communicated joy and connection for a lot of people and community. I was offered the chance to work with him. He'd heard I Need a Dollar, and he was interested in working with me on a particular style and sound, but it ended up becoming more of a country-esque mixture of dance music, folk, and soul. And that song, we weren't sure. I wasn't sure ultimately what would become of the song when we released it, but it became an international success and changed my career.
Yeah, I can imagine. I saw that it was 6 times platinum. It was certainly something that you heard everywhere, and people continue to hear everywhere. I can imagine how that would change your life, and it's must be a cool experience to know that your music is impacting people all over the world.
It's absolutely, and it reinforces for me the need to continue in my mission of making music that speaks to inspiration and motivation, to bringing people together.
Absolutely, and I know that has always been a big part of your work. And in 2014, you released another album, Lift Your Spirit, that had some big songs on it, including The Man. Can you let's just to get to the point where we can talk more about some of your other work that you're doing now. Tell us about sort of the last 10 years or so of your music career, and how things have evolved in that time to where you are today.
Yeah, I think this is pretty much the 10-year anniversary around when I released The Man and my version of Wake Me Up. And it's this whole new era of my career. I was able to perform on some of the biggest stages in the world, perform for Obama's staff dinner in the White House, lots of big music festivals like Glastonbury and Lollapalooza and Coachella, huge television shows like The Voice and Dancing with the Stars. I've just had, a really, I think, charmed life and a very lucky career. But all of that gave me the opportunity really to be present with my family as well. Having success early before having kids afforded me the opportunity to decide that I don't necessarily want to tour all the time. Maybe I'll stay home more often and take a festival here and a festival there, maybe a private gig here and a private gig there, without always being on the road. And then engage with my community more. Started an organization with my wife and some friends called Artivist Entertainment, where we would bring communities together to have deep and meaningful conversations around issues that may be affecting their communities. And that in that way, I started developing my kind of philanthropic / activist engagement.
Yeah, you really have set the example on that front for artists. And you talked about the balance that you've been able to create between family and career. And I think that's a really hard thing to do. I can certainly speak to it. And to have that opportunity and to seize it the way that you have, I think is incredibly remarkable and respectful. You know, you could certainly put yourself out there on the road, missing the family and killing yourself to bring in a few extra dollars perhaps. But it's admirable to see the path that you've chosen.
We all have the choice to make, you know. And my dad was away for a long time, long stretches of time, especially in the military, and I knew that I wanted something different for my family.
I do want to just ask a quick sort of fan question. Of all these awesome venues and festivals that you've played, has there been a favorite?
Well, there are, I guess, quite a few favorites. I would say there was a very special private dinner fundraiser for the Maybach Family Foundation in Cannes during the Cannes Film Festival, attended by Quincy Jones, who's one of my heroes, and I got a chance to perform for Quincy Jones. And it became a relationship that grew into him inviting me to perform at the Montreux Jazz Festival. And then, you know, also a relationship with one of my heroes who passed away, sadly, Bill Withers, who I consider one of the greatest songwriters of the modern era. And he, you know, invited me to perform at a benefit that he was raising funds at Carnegie Hall, a benefit concert, singing his songs. And I got a chance to sing for Bill Withers. Sing his song to him at Carnegie Hall. That was a big deal.
Wow. I mean, that sounds absolutely remarkable. I can't even imagine. And he must have been incredibly proud and excited to witness that.
I think so. Yeah, it was a beautiful moment.
Well, that's awesome to hear. And I know we've talked about how you've always integrated important messages and impact into your music. You know, one in particular I wanted to talk about is the video for Free that features, you know, my friend and former podcast guest, Alice Marie Johnson. Can you talk about the backstory on that song and how you started working with Alice?
Yeah. The song Free was inspired by a documentary film about the First Step Act and the path that Van Jones took to help move this legislation forward to free people who have been incarcerated for nonviolent crimes who ultimately have overstayed their sentences. When he asked me to write a song inspired by the film, I was able to glean inspiration from stories like that of Alice Marie Johnson, and speak to the anguish that one would feel should they be incarcerated for a nonviolent crime, and with a sentencing that is much harsher than it potentially should be. And when it came time to make a music video, I thought the best way to represent this song is to showcase the lives that have been impacted by the carceral system, and showcase some of the effort it took to transform the legislation.
There's so much work that needs to be done in our criminal justice system, and it's amazing that you're able to showcase Alice's story. And for each Alice, you know, there's so many others like her that are stuck inside, and you know, so much of the incarceration has been racially disproportionate and unfair, and so it's really important to show these stories to humanize the situation for those of us that may otherwise only be seeing numbers on a screen.
Absolutely. And that's how I show up in this work as a singer and songwriter trying to create music for positive social transformation.
And speaking of that, you mentioned to me that you're working on a new album that is really focused on this message of impact, with each song being about a person, a cause or an organization that's creating a positive impact. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I think that one of the ways I can impress upon my peers that their voice really matters is to create an album where each song amplifies and magnifies the work of a nonprofit organization. So I would write songs inspired by a story from the nonprofit organization or the mission of the nonprofit. But I want to expand on that because I believe that this is a hyper visual culture, and video really helps to further promote a concept and an idea. The song becomes a sonic legacy of the organization. A music video becomes a visual marketing tool for the song, and then beyond the music video, creating a small episodic series of of uh, shows that really dive deep and showcase the organization, and then the song creation and then song presentation. And that's a formula that I'm designing now, so that I can help really further the concept of the album. So when you figure an album is roughly 10 songs and a season of a television show is roughly 10 episodes, each song becomes an episode in the season, and each song represents the organization, each episode represents the organization. And it just becomes hopefully a virtuous loop that feeds back to showcasing, highlighting, amplifying the work of the organization so they can get more engagement and donations.
That's amazing to hear. And, I've seen it starting to play out with your song Stand Together. I was fortunate to hear that song live at an event, and you can just sort of feel the power in bringing these communities together around music. Music is one of those things that so many people have some kind of relationship with in one way or another. And can you talk any more about other specific examples in addition to Stand Together that you're working on?
Yeah, one of the first songs that I'll release it's called Never Let You Down, inspired by the Big Brothers Big Sisters of America. Had a chance to meet with one of the executives at the organization and really decided this is the kind of organization that deserves to have a sonic legacy, a song that will always point to the work that they're doing. And we get a chance to showcase that at one of their annual conferences very soon.
Amazing to hear that. And I'm really excited to see, where else you take the album and to watch these episodes that you're going to create. I've seen how powerful some of your video work can be. So really looking forward to that. And we talked earlier about how you've sort of set an example for artists in terms of how to utilize their platform to create positive impact and change. How important do you feel that it is that artists do that and try to use their platforms for good, or do you think there's, it's understandable situation when somebody chooses just to sort of leave it as a business?
Wow, I think everybody in every industry has a responsibility to use their company and platform for creating good. If you're doing otherwise, it's going to create unintended consequences that ultimately leads to death and suffering, and mental health suffering as well. So my thought is, in any way possible, every artist should be considering how they can use their access to ears and hearts, to communities, to enrich them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think there's many out there that don't understand the impact their words can have, but for those that have really embraced it, I've seen the ability to create tremendous change and impact.
Yeah, I understand that we all have the right to express ourselves however we want, and I just caution folks that you know the expression that you feel is authentic to you, um, could ultimately be something that can heal someone else. And likewise, the expression that you feel is authentic to you could also be something that harms someone else. And I just feel strongly that we all have a duty to help heal and not harm.
So you're creating this album about these amazing causes. You know, is there a timeline for that? And I'm also curious, does your songwriting process change for songs like this versus some that you've written earlier in your career?
Well, the timeline for the album is something that I want to release this year. So each song will come out consecutively throughout 2023 and then packaged as an album later. That's just because of the nuances around how the digital streaming world works. It's not the same as the old system where you had a physical product. And so, yeah, I will be releasing all the music this year, and the songwriting process doesn't necessarily change. It is very much the same. It's inspiration leading to a few words that then I expand into a story.
I feel like it varies so much with different artists and sometimes by song, but do you take a really long time when writing songs, or are you the type that just sort of lays them out right away and then iterates from there?
It happens both ways. I have songs that have taken months to write or years to write, and I have songs that I write within a few hours. And it really just comes down to when's the deadline, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. And some of the other impact work that you've done, I know you work a lot with Malaria No More. Would be great to learn more about that work.
When I signed my deal with Simon Fuller and with Interscope, I had the opportunity to meet Malaria No More UK and partner with them on an ambassadorship where I was sharing with my audience the opportunity to donate and engage in changing our relationship to the malaria disease. At the time that I started, a child was dying every minute, and I think now the statistic is every 2 minutes. So we've cut that in half, and that's just by getting the right kind of resources to purchase insecticidal nets for people to be able to use in their homes when they're asleep and on their windows, by increasing the medicines that are available to rural hospitals and clinics in hard to reach areas.
Is this the type of work that initially got you interested in biotech?
Oh, no, I wasn't even thinking about biotech back then. What got me into biotech was the idea of efficiency. I'd been vaccinated and boosted, but I still contracted COVID, and I wanted a more robust prophylactic solution. And so I did some research on papers that were out there by scientists who were working on medicines, and I found some scientists who had created a medicine that can actually block the virus from entering your cells, which seems to me a whole lot better than allowing the virus to enter your cells and then your immune system attacks it. I'd just rather have there not be an infection in the first place. So I contacted the scientists, and I sponsored a second stage of research to prove their concept and its actual real solution. And so in the biotech journey, you've got to de-risk so that before you even try your molecule in a human being, you know that it's not going to cause morbid outcomes. So that's where the stage we're at now is working on getting the funding to then do the toxicology studies in preclinical trials before we approach the FDA for human testing.
Wow, sounds like incredible technology. And, I've learned about some of that FDA experience and know that it is arduous and can be grueling and a big suck of both time and financial resources. Since you got involved in that, what is your experience with that process?
Well, what I found is that the FDA's job is to make sure that people are safe, and so you have to do as much of the de-risking as you can before you even approach them. But I've also learned that the government wants you to develop a business plan and have a bona fide sustainable business for your medicine, which is interesting. In a socialized healthcare country, you probably would have a government that would pay for a solution that would save lives. But in our system, with the process and the regulatory establishment, they want to know that the people who get sick will be able to pay for their 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 remedy. And I found that kind of awkward. But if that's the system that we are in, and that's the system that we play with, then I'll engage as such. If there are private foundations, family offices that have mission driven arms of investment, and certainly there are government grants, then I would use all of that to do as much of the research as possible. But still, at the end of the day, the FDA wants to know your commercialization plan.
I like what you said there about, it's not a great system necessarily, but you have to play within the system to create actual change. And I think that there are some people that are working on issues that are so staunch on how the change is implemented or going from 0 to 10 immediately, whereas incremental change is so important to actually getting to your end destination.
I'm learning a lot in this process, and I feel like the outcome is dependent on the science, and I certainly won't let money be the factor. You know, I want there to be enough investment and involvement to get the science to a point where if it doesn't work in humans, then that's fine. We'll abandon and move on. Nobody has to go down this path anymore. But if it does, the indication then suggests that we have a real opportunity to prophylax against almost any virus that has a protein-based host receptor, and to be ahead of the next pandemic. That's where my goal is, to get ahead of the next pandemic.
It sounds tremendously promising. And the idea of getting ahead of the next pandemic, I think, is pretty important. As COVID has, quote, gone away, it seems like that has become less on the forefront in terms of preparing for a potential next time. So glad to hear that important work like those that you're involved with are going on.
Great. Thank you.
And we've talked about a few different issues throughout our conversation: criminal justice, healthcare, your work with impoverished communities. Where would you, within this album that you're creating, are there certain areas that you want to stay within, or are you just anything that you really believe in that is having tremendous impact you're interested in covering?
For me, I love the journey of writing a song that has a powerful and impactful story. So I'm open to any organization where I'm inspired to write a song that feels like it can move the needle, that it feels like it could be a great sonic legacy for the organization.
I love that term, sonic legacy, and it makes so much sense in this context. And so with the music, anything that inspires you, how about with, your actual sort of day-to-day involvement? Are there certain areas, I know you've mentioned healthcare, that you stay sort of aligned with, or are you active in a variety of sort of areas of impact as well?
With Malaria No More, that's the first real deep dive that I did into engaging with an organization. There are local organizations that I'm part of, but then there's also a national organization around the campaign to end qualified immunity in the United States. In 2022, when George Floyd was murdered by Minneapolis police, I wanted to find out, what is it about policing culture that offers this God complex where they can get away with anything without accountability. And literally, I found that it was the Supreme Court of the United States that has a doctrine, a judicial precedent that offers basically impunity to government and state agents, and it's quite often used in court when uh, you know someone is victimized by law enforcement and they try to sue in civil court, and the judge says, "I can't take this case." You know, the police officers are uh, immune because of the judicial precedent at the Supreme Court. So I spent the better part of 2020 and some of 2021 working on awareness, sharing with my fellow citizens about this particular doctrine, and having meaningful discussion around whether or not this should be the interpretation of our civil rights code. Should our civil rights code allow certain individuals in our society to be immune from accountability for their actions? Um, it's an important question to ask, and my answer is no. I think everybody should be held accountable for their actions, and it's up to the jury or judge to decide, but it shouldn't be carte blanche uh, um, nullification of responsibility.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and appreciate you explaining it in those terms. And um, for other artists or people in position of influence, do you have any advice for getting engaged and using their platforms for good?
Yeah, I think the first thing you can do is you probably have, as an artist, you probably have some event in your life that awakened you to your social responsibility. Allow that event in your life to drive you in a direction toward creating some change. Um, it may be a community member that you know, a family member that you know, or a friend who's gone through a hard time, and they've been supported by a nonprofit organization. Make yourself available to that nonprofit organization and to their story, and use those moments, those events, or that relationship to inspire art that can magnify, amplify the mission of community organizations that are doing good work to help people.
And would you say that you had one of those catalyst events?
For me, there was a catalyst event when I had been um, asked to do some advertising campaigns for liquor beverage. And I don't drink personally, but it was one of my dad's favorite beverage, so I decided I'd do the liquor campaign, and my face was on billboards and posters all across South LA. And I got a phone call from an organization in South LA that had been working really steadfastly to improve the blight in the community. And part of that was an oversaturation of liquor stores where lots of, salient, salacious kind of activities happening, drug deals and pimping, and liquor stores generally don't have the most nutritious food. Actually, I'd say no nutritious food at all, but they are way more popular than grocery stores within the inner city. And certainly there are no fresh organic produce kind of venues within the inner city. So that phone call was one that opened my eyes to how I was promoting the very products that the community itself wanted to reduce and get rid of. And so that sort of, made me recognize the power of my voice and how I could use it in a better way.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that can apply to other artists. There's things that maybe seem like they don't have a lot connected to it if you make, this decision. But it's important to think about the impacts of each of your decisions.
Absolutely. Especially when you have an outsized reach. And I certainly, have access to a lot of minds.
Yeah. And we've talked about a lot of really cool work that you've done over the years. Do you have any stories of when you really saw, how your work could affect change or affect an individual?
There was a story that I heard where once somebody told me about their family member who was in a coma, and they would play my music to them regularly, in particular the song "Wake Me Up," and that this song became part of their family's sort of mantra of health and well-being and success in overcoming this coma. And eventually, the family member did come out of the coma, and it just it warms my heart to know that my music can serve a purpose in people's lives in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it really shows that the art is bigger than the artist, and um, I mean, that's one thing I've always loved about music is just its ability to connect with someone or and to impact mood, and to just really change outlooks on things. So, thank you for creating such powerful music.
Yeah, I think the other really nice thing is I get countless messages from young kids and their parents saying that "The Man" is their walkout song you know for their baseball game or one of their sporting events.
I love that. Yeah, it certainly has the opportunity to bring incredible joy as well. And um, throughout this career that you've built, has there been anyone in particular in your life that served as a mentor to you?
Yeah, Simon Fuller, who initially invited me into the major label world as my manager, has been a great mentor. And I think going through music and looking at songwriting as a craft, Bill Withers was certainly a mentor. Now in this BioTech uh, journey, I'm finding other mentors, advisors, they call them, who can help me on the business side and on the science side. And one of the scientists that I'm working with is certainly a mentor.
Great to hear. Mentors can be very important to success and to learning that you don't know everything. It's so important to lean on others who've been there. Um, but before I get to my last couple of questions, if you'd like, you can ask me a question.
Yeah. How did you come to the kind of success that you see now in the industry that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, I work in a lot of areas in real estate, film production, design, cannabis, among others. And, all of it I'd say is for better or worse through trial and error. I'm the type that jumps into things in order to learn them. And it's generally served me well, but I tend to learn things the hard way as well. And, I was fortunate to get involved in real estate business in college and have been able to expand that over the years to sort of serve as a foundation to allow me to focus on things that I'm both interested in and that I think can create positive impact. I think it's really just been by trial and error and surrounding myself with people that know way better than I do when I am looking to tackle certain projects.
Well, thanks for sharing that answer.
Yeah,
Good to
absolutely.
know.
And you've accomplished quite a bit. If everything were to end tomorrow and whatever that means to you, the universe is gone or you're gone, what would you be most proud of or grateful for?
I would say most proud of just writing songs that will stand the test of time and that have proven time and time again to be helpful to people. I get messages that show me exactly how my songs land and how they affect people's lives in a positive way. That to me is certainly the best uh, legacy.
Yeah, I mean, what is it like when you receive those messages? I mean, just thinking even in my own life, there's songs that have gotten me through some pretty tough times, and I'm sure that you hear that kind of thing frequently. You mentioned it with the family and listening to Wake Me Up, but what's that experience like for you as an artist and as a human being?
It's very rewarding. It is reassuring and it is motivating to keep doing exactly what I'm doing, and recognize that there's a whole world out there that's, whether they speak English or not, they're relating to the lyric and to the melody and to the vibe.
Absolutely. And there's one big question I make sure to ask every guest. If you could snap your fingers and fix one thing in the world, what would it be, and how do you think that change would reverberate?
Well, if I could snap my fingers and change one thing in the world, it would be food. Like if I had a superpower, I'd make it so that everybody had nutritious food at all times. I think it would really transform a lot, because if resources are what we generally go to war over, that's the one resource I think we should just, not have to fight about. And it probably, if people who are well satiated generally don't tend to fight.
Yeah, I think that that's a powerful answer. It's so important to think of us living in a world where such a huge portion of it didn't have to worry about survival on a day-to-day basis, and they could focus on what they care about and what they're good at. It's hard to even fathom what a better world we'd be living.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, Aloe, thank you so much for your time and for sharing these stories with us. It's really been awesome learning more about you and getting to know you better. And, I look forward to continuing our conversation and getting this story out to the viewers.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you, Jeff.
Thanks for listening to this episode of People Are the Answer. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with friends, and reviews or subscriptions on your favorite platforms go a long way to help the show grow. I want to share these incredible people and their remarkable work with as many others as possible. Thanks for your support. For more, go to peoplearetheanswer.com.